hopefully this audio will come out. I'm going to show you the slight differences between the current version, which is 0.18 and 0.1. This isn't quite version 0.2 yet, but the only difference needs to be done so far is a bit of background work still to do with the web server. There's a few little bugs still to sort, but pretty much everything now is visually complete. So showing what I've got here should be the same for 0.2 as it is for 0.18. So some of the improvements there have been since version 0.1. There's some crash fixes when closing browser windows if the browser window is still loading. There was an empty tab window issue that's now been solved. Windows would load off screen, so that if you'd minimised the window and then shut down the system, you couldn't then bring the window back again. Juddering windows, which I shall show in a few moments. Some slow loading times when loading many tabs. If you've got a text file, it will highlight when you start loading the program up or transport it to somebody else. I've made a much more usable web browser because the version 0.1 wasn't fit for purpose, and I've started adding some more applications as well. So although this version was supposed to only be bug fixes, really I had to fix the web browser because it's the most used application and you couldn't do things like open a link in a new tab. If a web page was supposed to open a link in a new tab, it would open in a non-formed window, so you couldn't actually do anything with it. And memory was a huge problem with browser tabs. So while version 0.1 was the baseline version, version 0.2 is pretty much now day-to-day usable. The roadmap hasn't really changed. That's just the standard list of what all different items are going to be, and I thought from there I will actually show you what is what. So let's start with version 0.1 first of all to show as a comparative example. Once loaded, as you can see, this is a web browser loading at the moment with various different items. I can add some more web browser windows. Let's just add a few more. And if you look at the text file, when you open the text file, it's highlighted as text. In each of the pages, when you open them, they judder. So you see the judder on the right hand side there every time I either refresh the tab or actually load the tab up. Got a problem as well with once we pin to the right, so you may notice that this tab hasn't actually refreshed properly. And one of the biggest problems is when I then unpin, now both the text file and the page that was open on the left hand side are both highlighted. So there's a few issues there that we're going to solve or see the solutions for. If you look at the web browser itself, let's go to a web page that would open pages in a separate tab, hopefully. This one might not if it realises that there isn't a. There we go. You see it opens in a separate window. There's no way of me finding out what the URL is. There's no way of me interacting with this window at all other than to shut the browser down. There's also no back button in a browser, which is kind of a bit problematic, as you might imagine. So I'm going to close that client down now and move into client 0.18. First thing to note, hopefully, is that this is a bit faster to actually open. It's opened a different page that was in the background there. So if we go to the text file, you'll see it's no longer highlighted. It's a very small thing, but when you've got a lot of text on the page, it does make a big difference. Now if we move to something that should have open in tabs, it actually now opens in a new tab window. You can see now that there is no judder as I click on the different pages. Some of these pages are just loading up still. There's also now a menu, which I will show in a few moments. If I move to another page, for example, once the page finishes loading, I now do have a back button, which is kind of useful. I can also right click on a link. There's a link, and it now allows me to open the page in a new tab, copy the link address, or add to the URL list, which I'm going to show you in a few moments. Program-wise, I've added, as you can see, a few more items, the version control programs, some simple editing tools for the for media as well. The programs are drag and drop installable, so they can go straight into version 0.1, except the version would be slightly different. Now if I pin to right as well, and then I pin back and unpin, you'll see that only the one selected tab is selected, which is as we would hope for. Biggest problem still is number of tab windows taking up a lot of memory. So one of the other systems I put in place was the ability to add URLs to a list. So instead of having to have every tab window open all the time, what you can actually do is add in tabs to a list instead. So let's move that one, let's delete that tab, let's put this one on as well. So this means that if you don't need to have the tab open all the time, like when you're doing some research, you can just have it as a list. It's not a favourite list, it is only for this one tab. But also if you transfer this tab window over to somebody else, it will actually transfer the whole list of websites all in one go to that individual as well. You can also mini-tab the tab so that if the name is quite long, you can shorten it so that it makes it smaller along the tab bar as well. URLs just shows and hides the list of URLs, of which you can shrink and hide that box as necessary. So it's much more efficient in terms of the tab windows and in terms of the browser, which is the big changes, and is starting to actually fix a lot of the issues that version 0.1 had. That's about it.